What is interesting in the comedies of Aristophanes is that, in particular, this type of comedy is considered a specific type of connection with the idea of natural theology, or better, rational theology, and the idea of critics against the politics. In this sense, in fact, in the comedies of Aristophanes, there is the idea that, in this sense, for example, Socrates considered the elements. This is really interesting because, according to the ancient Greek point of view, what happened it was in relation with the ancient Greeks gods. In fact, if we have to consider this type of point of view, if we compare, for example, Homer with the comedies of Aristophanes, it is interesting in particular that there is the main idea in the Homer idea that what happened it is not in relation with a specific type of logic, with a specific type of rules, but is in relation with the idea of gods that produce something, and at the same time, this type of logic is in relation with this type of destiny in relation with the gods. Therefore, Zeus wants something in relation with the connection between the sky and the sea, and this has happened. When Odysseus did this action against the son of Poseidon, Poseidon decided to went against to go against Odysseus, and this is really interesting because therefore what happened it was in relation with the causes and effects. It was in relation with the ideas of gods, but in particular in the end the main ruler that has to follow the destiny that it is Zeus. He is Zeus, had to decide, or better, had to consider the idea to continue the idea of destiny. Therefore, the idea of logics continue to maintain its type of connection with Zeus in relation with the idea of destiny. Therefore, Poseidon decided to developed a specific type of action to in relation with the sea to limit the actions of Odysseus. But at the same time, Zeus decided to impose his power as the god of the main god of Olympus, in relation with also the persuasion, the influence of Athena, to decided to maintain a sort of promise, a sort of deal with Athena to in relation with the destiny to support Odysseus in the sense that he succeeded to return to Ithaca, his island. This is really interesting because the Iliad is the same. If we consider the Iliad, things happen because some gods are in relation with Greeks, other gods were in relation with the Trojans. There is a specific type of war because the destiny, because Parides did a specific type of judgment to Aphrodites as the best, the beautiful goddesses between the goddesses. And at the same time, between Athena in this sense and Hera, and at the same time, we know that this type of war it is in relation with the promise of Aphrodites. Therefore, Parides, the cause that Parides decided to love Helena, it is because Aphrodites developed this magic to Aphrodites in relation with the destiny. In fact, we know about, in relation with the myth, that the father of Parides, according to the myth, had a specific type of dream then that explained to him that one day Parides, his son, would have been a specific type of mistake or a specific type of terrible dangers for his city. This is really interesting because we know that this type of relation between causes and facts it is in relation with the myth, and the myth is happen and happens in relation with the causes and facts and is inside things in Homer. What Aristophanes instead wanted to explain with his comedies is that, for example, it is true that Aristophanes explained that Socrates is a sort of sophist, according to Socrates, according to Aristophanes, against the opinion of Plato. There is a specific type of debate between Plato and Aristophanes. But it is really interesting also that Aristophanes explained that what would like to explain Socrates is that there is no connection between gods of Olympus and things. Therefore, gods of Olympus are not inside things, but what happened because there is a specific type of cause in relation with effects, natural effects in relation with cause. If we have to consider this with Plato, this is really interesting because Plato explained that the demiurge assemble things, better, the main god assemble things, but things happen because there is a relation between cause and effects. If we consider this type of connection between Aristophanes and Plato, we know that this type of connection between these two important authors of ancient Greeks developed a new type of idea. Therefore, There are no more Zeus or Poseidon of in general gods of Olympus that are inside things, but there is a connection between cause and effects in relation with elements, in relation with facts, in relation with physics, that produce something in relation with the idea of physics. Therefore, we can research what happened in relation with this type of study. There is no God that produces something, but there is a specific type of cause that produces an effect, and we can research what happened. Therefore, God could also exist, an assemble demiurge that assemble things as metaphysical point of view, but at the same time, physics is not necessarily always in relation and often in relation with this type of main idea of demiurge. Demiurge is the main assemble, is that God that assembles things, but at the same time, there is a sort of disconnection between demiurge and physics in relation with the idea that I can decide or something happened because there are rules of physics that produce this. This is really interesting because if we compare Aristophanes and with Plato, we understand in any case the point of view of Aristotle. And that is the same point of view of Aquinas in the Middle Ages. In fact, Aristophanes explained that gods is not so important, and Socrates explained that, according to the point of view of Socrates, for example, when it rains is because there is some causes that produce the rain. It's not because I leave my house with umbrella that it rains, for example. This is a fallacy. If I leave my house with umbrella, it's not necessary that it rains, but it rains, therefore probably I have to lose my house with umbrella. This is a specific type of example that I explained to explain this type of example. Therefore, it's not the same. It's not the example that Aristophanes explained. But with this example, we understand that if it exists a demiurge that assemble, and we compare this type of logics, the rain with our action, the rain with the effects that the rain produce. If happen the rain, there are externality into the situation where the rain arrived. For example, when there is the rain, the city could have specific type of effects if the city had specific type of relation with this rain. Very interesting, also with snow, etc. The idea of externalization, this type of idea could arrive also with Aristophanes when Socrates explained the idea that, oh, very is interesting that this type of causes produce an effect. Probably it's not destiny that would like to do that there are this type of externalization. I can analyze this type of facts to understand why, therefore, men decided to have a specific type of behavior in relation with the idea of rain. For example, today is rain, therefore I decide to go to the umbrella. Not because Poseidon, but because the rain. Therefore, it's not, there is an analyze that I have to do to understand what could do I to do. I have to understand, therefore, something to think how to think better in relation with elements, physics elements. This is really interesting because this is already social science. It's not a question of God. It's not more a question that I have to understand Zeus to understand what I have to do. No. I have to understand elements. I have to understand physics to understand how people could choose or could change their choices. This is really interesting. Because in this sense, there is a social fact. The same social fact that Aristophanes in his comedy explained when, in the War of the Peloponnesian, the slaves had to be free because a lot of free men died and a lot of slaves died, but at the same time, a lot of slaves, some slaves lost their lord because the lord died, but these slaves they wanted to revolt because in the War of Peloponnesian they didn't have a specific type of rights. Therefore, the Athenian people had to do something. There is a connection also with the idea, not only with the idea of element and physics, also with the idea of what happened in this sense in the idea of social science. It's not a matter of God. we have to consider the politicians, the political point of view to understand what have to do in relation with our politics, because Sparta is an enemy, and Sparta hadn't to win the war, and therefore we have to choose for the better, for the our good. Therefore, slaves are important. Therefore, if we decide to promise to these that they will be free, therefore probably they could fight for them. There is another type of thinking in this sense. It's not a matter of idea of constitution in relation with religion, but sometimes of necessity that we have to understand the idea of physics and the idea of political point of view that Socrates would like to explain. This is really, really interesting because therefore the idea of demiurge is the assemble to permit us to understand the elements of physics that are in relation with them, between them. Therefore, I understand that I can create a specific type of distinction between the metaphysics and understand physics to understand the metaphysical point of view. Therefore, the elements, the cause and effects are in relation with a specific type of rule that it is probably eternal. In fact, the demiurge of Plato is eternal. It's not more a question of immortal and nothing. The gods of Olympus are not eternal. There is no rule in relation with the god of Olympus, only the destiny, but this type of destiny is in relation with each type of idea of the god of Olympus. Each a question of eternal rule in relation with physics elements, in relation with their rules that depends on the one hand with these causes and effects, but at the same time with specific type of eternal in relation with a specific type of rule that is objective. As objective is a sort of eternal thing point of view that on the one hand is for the elements. There are rules in relation with math, in relation with physics, in relation with social science. There are, and this type of rules, I can connect this type of rules with social science and STEM science, but the idea also with demiurge. This is the main debate because Aristotle then took these ideas to explain that there is the first act, God, but at the same time there is also elements between cause and effects. There is the material things, there are material things, there are things that happen between them, etc. What is important is to study things. Therefore, the idea of Aristotle and Plato, Aristophanes and Plato, if we have to there is the connection between them, produce the idea of Aristotle. Then, in the Middle Ages, it will be used, for example, by the Thomistic. In this sense, to understand that there is, a connection between physics and metaphysics, but to understand that considering this connection between physics, I understand also that there are objective rules that are important to understand the physics ideas to the eternal idea. Therefore, the metaphysical way. In the question of the polytheism of ancient Greek society, this cannot be, because there were objective rules, each god has his rules, and the logic is not important. Isn't important. This is really, really interesting because we understand, therefore, that on the one hand there is the idea of critics between Plato and Aristophanes, but on the other hand there is idea, a specific type of logic that it is in connection with Plato and Aristophanes. The idea of social science, the idea of rule that we can understand our studies, but also the idea of objective main God that assemble things to have this type of connection between, in the end, physical point of view. Because if it wouldn't be this type of God, how can I understand what happened in relation with things? This is the main idea that it was anticipated by the ancient Greek philosophers, intellectuals, for example, Aristophanes and Plato, that in the Middle Ages it will be used by, for example, Aquinas, etc. Important also member of the church. And this is the idea of science, therefore. Because if there is objective, there is also a possible demonstration in relation with the elements. If there is ensemble, I understand something. if there is non ensemble, if gods have a specific type of very moral, if gods have a specific type of their rules, there is no rule that I can use to understand something. But with the idea of assemble, I can use my knowledge to understand something to arrive to God or to arrive to the truth better. It's the same idea that Socrates explained to explain that he know that he didn't anything. He didn't know anything. The main ignorance in this sense, not the worst ignorance, the best ignorance. Socrates knew that he couldn't know always and often and everything, but at the same time, the worst ignorance is that ignorance that explains in the end that you think to know something that you don't know. But to understand this type of idea, I have to understand the rules that are in connection between them in relation with a specific idea that these rules could be in connection. I cannot connect these rules, I cannot understand these rules if one day Poseidon produce these rules, on the other day Poseidon produce other rules in contrast with other gods that each day produce other ideas. There is the chaos in this sense. There is an impossibility to understand something. And this is the main point because the ancient Greek philosophy criticized the gods of Olympus, because the gods of Olympus are immortal, not eternal. There are no eternal rules. I cannot understand. I cannot transcend the physics with metaphysics. There is this problem in the polytheism. And this is why, in the end, Aquinas used the philosophy of Aristotle and Plato in the end, because Aristotle it was influenced by Plato. Bye.